This seems as good a time as any to talk about the fall. I speak not. This seems as good a time as any to talk about the fall. I'm not talking about the fall of the human race. I'm not talking about the fall of language, the fall of meaning, the fall of the family, the fall of Western civilization, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, or the fall of Lucifer as described in Milton's Paradise Lost. I'm talking about the fall that occurs as the result of vigorous, ruthless self-application of principles of deconstruction and dissection of one's own predicates. For those unfamiliar with the terms, deconstruction is very simply the proposition that a given thing, a given idea, a given statement may be described as component parts, an arrangement of components, and that those components themselves may be described as arrangements of components, and we regress further and further and further. And the dissection of our predicates, the dissection of our undeclared predicates, is that I realize that when I make a statement, when I propose that a thing is true, there are implied other things that I am saying are true, and needed to be true in order for me to say that this thing that I said is true. These are both key styles of argument and rhetoric, and they are both applied fairly frequently in the deductive process. They get used very frequently in logic, in mathematics, in philosophy, but also in more pragmatic applications like computer programming. We also find a lot of this in literary theory. Anyway, the process looks a little something like this. You start with a statement. You start with an idea, like I am here. And you apply both of these methods to it simultaneously. You look at I am here from a deconstruction perspective, and you see that I am saying that there is an I, that I am here. This is a relational arrangement between I, here, and am. We also find, by taking a look at it through the problem of predicates, that I have presumed a here, that I have presumed an I, and that there is presumed a relation of amness, which can describe this particular arrangement between I and here. It sounds like an empty intellectual exercise, and most of the time that it's self-applied, that's exactly what it is. We do find that there are people who apply it more personally, who apply it with more personal relevance, and with a great commitment to the vigor of that application. Some persons may find that in applying this to a degree, breaking down, recognizing kind of from a top-down perspective, seeing the forest less the trees, that this problem of deconstruction means that we essentially have an interminable regressive relations, that no matter how far back we go in the chain, we're going to find that we have described something in such a way where we have to take another step back and analyze the components of that description, and so on and so on and so forth. Paired with the problem of predicates, we find that to state anything at all, some assumption is made. And however far back we go, we do make some assumptions. These are both well-established problems in the history of philosophy, and as academic exercises, numerous solutions have been proposed. Many great thinkers in Western thought have just said, well, we just start here, because if we don't start here, we can't start at all. Others aren't willing to do that. Others say, if we're just making an arbitrary starting point from which meaning is derived, then meaning is arbitrary. And at that point, we might as well put the starting point wherever we like, wherever it most suits us, wherever it best amuses us. Other people go to this entire issue of starting points, of constructions, of predicates, and say, well, yes, this thing is made up of parts, but it has an identity unique to that arrangement. And that's true of any arrangement. And so this regress process doesn't really do us much good. And as far as the problem of predicates, well, yes, that's a fault of language. That's a fault of the way logic is structured. And as such, rather than asking if we can produce a chain of reasoning which renders something apparently inalienably true, let's just ask instead, is this line of reasoning actually useful? Is this statement actually useful? And there, taking the starting point that we say things for a reason. They're taking the starting point that meaning comes immediately into being from us having made a statement. That we made a statement with a purpose. We don't generally engage in mathematics, for example, just for the sake of doing math. We generally have a problem that we're trying to solve. So that's another take on the issue. There are countless others, and much as there is a lot of variation in the interpretation or practice of the application of these principles, rejection of them, or interpretation of how they interact when we're dealing with philosophical problems as external intellectual objects, there is an equivalent variety in terms of how we personally engage with these subjects and what we personally derive from these propositions about how propositions are made. Some people, in trying to use these as guidelines for determining what is true for them in a personally relevant way, swing towards an absolute relativism. Very likely spoken with someone who has used the phrase, "that's your truth." That's your truth, this is my truth. And this is extended in some bodies of thought to the idea that we are basically the center of our own epistemic universe, and that your universe and mine do not overlap, do not coincide, that the cause and effect relationships in your universe, and certainly the meaning that you assign to cause and effect within your universe, do not impact me. I'm not really a fan of that one. Other people go, again, towards that idea of, well, if anywhere that we put the starting point is arbitrary, then we can put it anywhere. And if we can put it anywhere, then we should put it wherever it best suits us. We should put it wherever it best amuses us. Their actions are intended to and are motivated by an intent to satirize or comment on where various people put that starting point. And that's done with greatly varying degrees of sophistication. At its worst, it's gibberish. At its best, it is a profound lens that these people provide to the people around them for reinterpreting themselves, reinterpreting their relations, and in particular the relations of their presumptions and their starting points to the starting points of others. Still, other people apply these principles ruthlessly to their own ideas, to their own thoughts. I have an idea. I have a thought. I have an assumption. I have a point of reference that I use to interpret how the world works. Let's apply these principles to that. Let's apply these principles to that. Let's apply them to my values, to my associations, to my ideas, and my ideas about my ideas, and so on and so forth.